This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Paul Hansen. Thurley, Ruxton by Philip Verrill Mighels. Chapter 39. A Desperate Flight. Scarcely daring to breathe, facing the room with dilated eyes and expecting an almost immediate demand for admission to the room by some of the men, Thurley stood holding one end of the chain like a goddess released from bondage. She was almost prepared for a fight for her life had the moment demanded a fierce and desperate stand. But nothing happened. Her colour, having fled, crept back once more as her fever and hope burned anew. She was free in part. She must take advantage of her moment. The window was her only concern. To attempt escape by the stairs and door was a thought far too frightening for a moment's entertainment. She was certain that some, if not all, of the men were below in their usual quarters. The room afforded nothing in the nature of a rope. She knew from her former examination that the window was far too high from the frozen ground and snow for a leap, or even a drop. She had heard of captives tearing the sheets of a bed to form an escaping strand. Wrapping half of the chain about her waist and securing the end with the wire, she tumbled the bed clothes over wildly to find there were no sheets. She remembered the fact for a moment, forgotten in excitement. But two of the blankets were old. She dragged them out and attempted to part them with her hands. The hems at the ends resisted stubbornly. She bit and tore them with her teeth. Once they were severed, she made headway faster, using jaws and hands together. The blankets were torn into 3 strips each. Then she knotted their ends together. Zagorski stirred and partially rose, goaded by some latent force that frequently possessed her in her sleep, rousing her even to walking. "Believin," she said, apparently staring at Thurley. In sickening fright, the girl let fall her strips of cloth as the woman sank back in her bed. Cold moisture broke on Thurley's brow. Her heart throbbed like an engine in her breast. It seemed as if the horrid inefficiency of a nightmare numbed and paralyzed her actions, yet she soon resumed her task. Fear had electrified her ingenuity as courage had steeled her nerves. She tied her rope to the table leg that was nearest the window at last, and slightly raised the sash to drop the end. The window came down again immediately, its loose old skeleton rattling in the frame. Once more its noise awoke the peal of alarms in Thurley's bosom. A gush of the wintry air sweeping in had struck like a zone of chill across her heated body. She glanced about, aware she should need protection from the night and its wind and snow. The grey old cloak was on the bed. She caught it up and put it on, when a crack and a thump on the stairs below made her gasp and start with dread. She stood there trembling, suppressing her breath, and pressing both hands above her heart, as if to stifle its clamour. Again all was still. She thought of the lamp and blew it out as a measure of precaution. Groping her way to the window again, she thrust aside the curtains, raised the sash, and put out her foot to crawl out backward. Her one hand closed in frantic grip upon her strand of wool. A horrible voice abruptly woke the silence, Zagorski talking in her unsurrendered restlessness of spirit. "You, John, shall strike the blow." A fearful gurgle sputtered in her throat. She rose from the bed as Thurley could hear and floundered about the room. Unable to endure the frightening thoughts that suddenly swooped upon her, Thurley supported the sash with her shoulder, dropped backward from the sill, and was suddenly out in the clean-smelling cold, swaying 20 feet up from the ground. The window had closed behind her, falling with its rattle to the cushion of wool where the blanket lay across the frame. Down, down slipped Thurley, nearly thrust from her hold, when a knot in the strand was encountered. Her hands were all but scorched by the rope, as the last few feet slid through her tender palms, and she landed on and fell to the earth. Up in an instant, unhurt and remarkably revived in strength and nerve by the tonic of the air, she paused for a moment to glance about and listen before she moved. The entire side of the building was dark. Not a gleam of light was revealed from a single window. There was not a sound in all the world, it seemed, nor a sign of other houses. A few stars gleamed in wells of vast profundity between huge masses of cloud. The great brazen dipper blazed heatlessly as it swung about the polar star immovably studded in the north. It seemed to Thurley like a guidance divine as she recognized this mighty constellation. It told her the way to go. The village of North Winnig, she thought, must barely be a mile to the west. She did not know the abandoned mill was not this structure. She was quitting, but was miles away in the opposite direction. Raising the cloak, which would have dragged and caught upon her feet, she faced the wind that had blown all day across the wintry continent, and was presently plunging through dry drifts of snow and over barren earth too hard to receive her tracks. The wind sent scud where the drifts were piled, and this filled in the imprints of her shoes and so concealed her trail. She glanced behind as she hastened on, but neither a shout nor a ray of light did the sombre old hovel surrender. Nevertheless, she felt pursued, a haunting sense of her insecurity peopling every shadow with a sinister form, about to leap out and retake her. She presently ran, as increasing distance from the house made the echo of footsteps far too faint to travel back and betrayed the fact that she was gone. She came to a fence and clambered through, tearing the cloak which she held as close as possible about her chest, where the wind sought the thinness of her garments. For the very first time since the moment of entering Edith's room, she missed her furs, her muff and scarf, which Zagorski must have taken. They did not matter. Nothing mattered now but escape, to escape the village and beg for protection and shelter from the first warm house she should find. Running and walking, feverishly pushing forward, she took no heed of distance or the roughness of the field where she was travelling. She felt a glow of warmth and life responding to her rapid locomotion, and at last she came upon a road. It led apparently westward, doubtless, she thought, to the village she was seeking. Perhaps North Winnig was now no more than half a mile away, and still no sign of pursuers in the rear. It was a strange, still world of grey and black, with skeleton trees against the restless sky, and huge abysses of shadow in the far-off woods, and lakes of dull snow in the meadows. It was frozen to lifelessness, stilled to the silence of death. Thurley went on. It seemed endless, this road, and its course was altered at a curve here and there, till directions were all confused. Dark clouds had blotted out the stars, and from time to time a flurry of snow was driven fiercely earthward on the wind. Thurley was certain she had come a mile at the end of a half an hour of ceaseless hurry. She had gone more nearly 2, and by then was 6 from the nearest town and leaving it further behind. She had nothing by way of plan save to go and go till she came to North Winnig. She had slowed to a steady, active gait, but doubts were beginning in her mind. An hour out she halted, glancing about her in bewilderment. wondering whither she had come. Long before this, as she felt convinced the village should have been encountered, a realizing sense that she must have chosen the wrong direction came discouragingly upon her. She dared not return, and so approached the house from which she had escaped. She felt a little weariness and a dread of being lost. The chill of the breeze would not permit long halting in the road. She must go, and keep on going, she knew, but where? "I shall come to something finally," she told herself in bravery, and onward she trudged as before. At midnight she was all but exhausted. The chain about her waist was cold and heavy. A new despair was at her heart. To go on all night was hardly possible. To sink by the road in such a bitter atmosphere would mean to perish long before dawn. She felt the road must terminate at last at a farm, if nothing more. Anything now as a shelter from the wind would be as a haven of rest. The snow was deeper in the road, and her feet were heavy with its weight and constant retarding. She went on and on. It seemed to her a time that was never to end. It was nearly 1 o'clock in the morning, with the wind assuming a colder, brisker search of all the land, when out of the darkness loomed the low, squat form of a shed or outbuilding standing by the road. A note of gladness escaped the girl as she prodded her lagging limbs to vigorous effort. She was certain of a house which should be near at hand, and her theory was right. There had been a dwelling once at the place, and its ruins were there when she came to the sight, the mute, gaunt bones of a structure consumed in the autumn by fire. Thurley could have wept from weariness and disappointment. She stumbled back to the shed-like building, once a blacksmith's shop, effected an entrance where a board was torn away, and sinking down where a few old shavings had escaped the pencils of snow flung in at gaping cracks, she sheltered herself as best she might in a broken box beneath a workman's bench, and was thankful to God for rest. End of chapter 39.